Question 1. Governance review demonstrates that an applicant to Anderson University, South Carolina, has submitted an essay that is exceptionally well-written and persuasive, highlighting strong potential for future leadership and community engagement. However, the applicant's academic record and standardized test scores, while meeting the minimum threshold, are not as strong as those of many other candidates. The admissions committee is aware that this applicant has a family connection to a prominent donor. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct approach for the admissions committee to take? Option A. Prioritize the applicant's essay and potential for future contributions, considering the family connection as a positive indicator of future engagement with the university. Option B. Focus on the applicant's potential for future leadership and community engagement, and if the academic record is borderline, consider overlooking minor deficiencies in the essay or test scores due to the applicant's connections. Option C. Discreetly contact the prominent donor to gauge their interest in the applicant's admission and to understand the potential benefits of admitting this candidate. Option D. Evaluate the applicant's essay and academic record strictly against the established admissions criteria, giving due weight to all components of the application without regard to external factors or connections. The correct answer is D. Evaluate the applicant's essay and academic record strictly against the established admissions criteria, giving due weight to all components of the application without regard to external factors or connections. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing institutional goals with ethical considerations and adherence to university entrance exam regulations. The admissions committee must make a decision that is fair to all applicants, upholds the integrity of the entrance process, and complies with Anderson University's stated policies and any applicable South Carolina educational regulations. Careful judgment is required to avoid bias and ensure that the decision-making process is transparent and defensible. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of all application materials, including the essay, against established admissions criteria. This approach is right because it prioritizes a fair and equitable evaluation process, which is a fundamental ethical principle in admissions and is likely mandated by Anderson University's internal policies and any relevant South Carolina regulations governing higher education admissions. It ensures that decisions are based on merit and qualifications, not on external pressures or personal biases. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the applicant's potential future contributions to the university, without a comprehensive review of their current qualifications as presented in the application, fails to adhere to the principle of objective evaluation. This could lead to preferential treatment or discrimination, violating ethical standards and potentially university policy. Another incorrect approach that involves seeking external influence or pressure to admit the applicant bypasses the established admissions process. This undermines the integrity of the examination and admission system, creating an unfair advantage and potentially violating ethical codes of conduct for university staff and faculty. It also risks compromising the university's reputation for fairness. A further incorrect approach that involves overlooking discrepancies or weaknesses in the application to accommodate the applicant's connections fails to uphold the standards of academic integrity and fairness. This approach prioritizes expediency or personal relationships over objective assessment, which is ethically unsound and likely contrary to university admissions guidelines. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes 1. Understanding and adhering to all relevant university policies and external regulations. 2. Applying objective and consistent evaluation criteria to all applicants. 3. Documenting the decision-making process thoroughly. 4. Seeking guidance from supervisors or ethics committees when faced with complex or ethically ambiguous situations. 5. Maintaining confidentiality and impartiality throughout the process. Question 2. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of delays in processing application essays due to manual review, and a high impact on applicant satisfaction if these delays are significant. Considering the need to optimize this process for the Anderson University, South Carolina entrance exam, which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to address this risk? Option A. Conduct a thorough analysis of current essay review workflows to identify specific time-consuming steps, develop targeted technological or procedural enhancements, pilot these changes with a subset of applications, and then implement based on performance and compliance review. Option B. Implement a simplified, standardized essay prompt for all applicants to reduce the complexity of the review process. Option C. Increase the number of admissions staff dedicated to essay review to absorb the workload, without altering the existing review methodology. Option D. Immediately invest in a cutting-edge AI essay grading system to automate the entire review process, aiming for maximum speed and cost savings. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough analysis of current essay review workflows to identify specific time-consuming steps, develop targeted technological or procedural enhancements, pilot these changes with a subset of applications, and then implement based on performance and compliance review. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's operational efficiency with the integrity of its admissions process, all while adhering to specific entrance exam regulations. The pressure to optimize processes can sometimes lead to shortcuts that might inadvertently compromise fairness or compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any process improvements do not violate the spirit or letter of the Anderson University, South Carolina entrance exam guidelines. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the admissions data to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies, followed by the development of targeted solutions that are then piloted and evaluated against established performance metrics and regulatory compliance. This approach is correct because it prioritizes a data-driven, iterative, and compliant method for process optimization. It aligns with the principles of good governance and operational excellence expected in an academic institution, ensuring that changes are evidence-based and do not introduce new risks or compliance issues. Specifically, it respects the need for thoroughness and validation before widespread implementation, which is crucial for maintaining the credibility of the entrance exam and the university's admission standards. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction by automating the review of all application essays without human oversight would be professionally unacceptable. This fails to acknowledge the nuanced nature of essay evaluation, which often requires subjective judgment and the identification of unique qualities that automated systems might miss. It also risks overlooking potential instances of plagiarism or misrepresentation, which could lead to admitting unqualified candidates and damaging the university's reputation. Furthermore, it bypasses the established validation steps, potentially introducing errors into the admissions process without proper testing. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing a new, untested software system for applicant data management without a pilot phase or comprehensive training for admissions staff, would also be professionally unacceptable. This approach prioritizes speed over thoroughness and user adoption. It creates a high risk of data errors, system malfunctions, and staff frustration, all of which can disrupt the admissions workflow and potentially lead to incorrect decisions. The lack of pilot testing means potential issues are not identified and resolved before impacting the entire applicant pool, violating the principle of careful, controlled implementation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the current process and identify specific pain points or inefficiencies. 2. Research and propose potential solutions, considering their impact on operational efficiency, cost, and regulatory compliance. 3. Evaluate proposed solutions against established criteria, including adherence to Anderson University, South Carolina entrance exam guidelines. 4. Develop a phased implementation plan, including pilot testing and staff training where applicable. 5. Monitor the performance of implemented changes and make adjustments as needed, ensuring continuous compliance and improvement. Question 3. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a proposed new online degree program could significantly increase tuition revenue for Anderson University. However, initial faculty feedback suggests that the program's specialized curriculum may strain existing faculty resources and potentially dilute the focus of current on-campus offerings. The university's strategic plan emphasizes expanding online education, but also highlights a commitment to maintaining high academic standards and robust student support services. Which of the following approaches best navigates these competing considerations in line with institutional responsibility and regulatory expectations? Option A. Proceed with the new online program, prioritizing revenue generation and leveraging existing faculty expertise as much as possible, with a plan to hire additional faculty only if absolutely necessary after the program is established. Option B. Conduct a thorough academic and financial feasibility study, including detailed curriculum review, assessment of faculty workload and expertise, evaluation of student support needs, and a clear plan for resource allocation before making a final decision on program launch. Option C. Immediately launch the online program to capitalize on the revenue opportunity, assuming that any initial resource challenges can be addressed through ad hoc adjustments and that the market demand will justify the investment. Option D. Focus solely on the revenue potential of the online program, deferring any detailed assessment of academic quality or faculty impact until after the program has been running for at least 2 academic years. Correct answer is A. Proceed with the new online program, prioritizing revenue generation and leveraging existing faculty expertise as much as possible, with a plan to hire additional faculty only if absolutely necessary after the program is established. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the potential benefits of a new academic program with the university's ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. The university must ensure that any new program aligns with its mission, provides genuine educational value, and is financially sustainable without compromising existing resources or misleading prospective students. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the proposed program's alignment with Anderson University's mission and strategic goals, alongside a thorough assessment of its potential impact on student learning outcomes and existing academic offerings. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the principles of academic integrity and responsible institutional management. Regulatory justification stems from the need to adhere to accreditation standards, which mandate that institutions offer programs that are academically rigorous, serve the needs of students, and are supported by adequate resources. Furthermore, transparency with prospective students regarding program quality and outcomes is an ethical imperative. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on potential revenue generation, without a rigorous academic review, fails to uphold academic standards, and could lead to the offering of a program that does not provide adequate educational value. This violates the ethical duty to students and could contravene accreditation requirements for program quality. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes rapid implementation over thorough due diligence, such as neglecting to assess faculty capacity or resource allocation, risks compromising the quality of education and operational sustainability. This demonstrates a lack of responsible stewardship of university resources and a disregard for the student experience, potentially leading to regulatory issues if accreditation standards are not met. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured evaluation that begins with defining the university's objectives for the new program. This should be followed by a multifaceted assessment encompassing academic merit, market demand, financial viability, resource availability, and alignment with institutional values. Stakeholder input, including faculty, administration, and potentially external experts, should be sought throughout the process. A commitment to transparency and ethical conduct should guide all decisions, ensuring that the best interests of students and the university's long-term academic mission are prioritized. Question 4. The performance metrics show a significant backlog in processing new student applications for the upcoming academic year at Anderson University, South Carolina. A team member suggests expediting the process by admitting students who have submitted most, but not all, required documentation, with the understanding that the missing items will be collected post-admission. This approach aims to quickly reduce the backlog and improve the application processing rate. Option A. Proceed with admitting students based on the proposed expedited process, ensuring that a clear plan is in place to collect all missing documentation from admitted students within the first semester. Option B. Reject applications with any missing documentation immediately, regardless of the volume of other applications, to maintain strict adherence to the initial application completeness requirement. Option C. Focus solely on clearing the backlog by prioritizing applications with complete documentation, even if it means delaying the review of incomplete applications beyond the standard processing timeline. Option D. Implement a standardized, documented process for conditionally admitting students with minor, clearly defined missing documentation, contingent upon timely submission of all required items, and ensure this process aligns with Anderson University's admission policies and South Carolina state regulations. The correct answer is A. Proceed with admitting students based on the proposed expedited process, ensuring that a clear plan is in place to collect all missing documentation from admitted students within the first semester. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for efficient student onboarding with the imperative to adhere to Anderson University's established admission policies and South Carolina state regulations governing higher education admissions. The pressure to meet performance metrics can tempt individuals to bypass or expedite processes in ways that might compromise compliance, leading to potential legal issues, reputational damage, and unfair treatment of applicants. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of each applicant's submitted documentation against the Anderson University's stated admission criteria and relevant South Carolina state guidelines for university admissions. This ensures that all applicants are evaluated consistently and fairly, upholding the integrity of the admissions process and adhering to regulatory requirements. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of admitting unqualified students or overlooking critical documentation, thereby safeguarding the university's academic standards and compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing speed over accuracy by admitting students based on incomplete applications, even if it temporarily boosts performance metrics, violates the principle of due diligence required by university admissions policies and potentially state regulations. This could lead to admitting students who do not meet academic prerequisites, creating future academic support burdens, and potentially violating state guidelines on student qualifications. Accepting applications with minor discrepancies without a clear, documented process for addressing them, while seemingly efficient, risks inconsistent application of admission standards. This can lead to accusations of favoritism or discrimination, and may contravene state regulations that mandate fair and equitable treatment of all applicants. Focusing solely on meeting numerical performance targets without considering the qualitative aspects of an applicant's file or the university's established admission standards demonstrates a failure to uphold professional responsibility. This approach neglects the core purpose of admissions, which is to select qualified individuals who will succeed at the university, and may indirectly violate state regulations that emphasize the quality of the student body. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admission should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes compliance and fairness. This involves understanding and strictly adhering to institutional policies and all applicable state and federal regulations. When faced with performance pressures, the framework should guide them to identify process bottlenecks and propose improvements that enhance efficiency without compromising compliance or fairness. This might involve advocating for additional resources, refining existing workflows, or seeking clarification on ambiguous policies, rather than cutting corners. The ultimate goal is to achieve both operational effectiveness and regulatory integrity. Question 5. Benchmark analysis indicates that Anderson University's admissions process has a longer processing time compared to peer institutions, leading to potential applicant attrition. To address this, which approach to process optimization would best align with regulatory expectations for fair and equitable admissions in South Carolina? Option A. Implement a strict, uniform set of criteria and a rigid timeline for all applicants, regardless of their background or the nature of their application materials, to ensure consistent processing speed. Option B. Develop and implement a multi-stage review process that incorporates both automated initial screening for basic eligibility and a subsequent in-depth qualitative review by admissions counselors for all shortlisted candidates, with clear guidelines for both stages. Option C. Introduce a fully automated system that assigns an admission score based on a limited set of quantifiable data points, with decisions made solely by the algorithm to expedite processing. Option D. Significantly reduce the time allocated for each application review stage and decrease the number of application components considered to meet faster processing targets. The correct answer is B. Develop and implement a multi-stage review process that incorporates both automated initial screening for basic eligibility and a subsequent in-depth qualitative review by admissions counselors for all shortlisted candidates, with clear guidelines for both stages. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's desire for efficient admissions processing with the ethical and regulatory obligations to ensure a fair and equitable evaluation of all applicants. The pressure to optimize processes can inadvertently lead to overlooking critical qualitative aspects of an application, potentially disadvantaging certain candidates. Careful judgment is required to implement efficiency measures without compromising the integrity of the admissions process or violating any applicable South Carolina regulations governing higher education admissions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the existing admissions workflow to identify bottlenecks and areas for improvement, while simultaneously ensuring that any proposed changes do not create new barriers or introduce bias. This approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of the current process before implementing modifications. It aligns with the principles of good governance and administrative best practices expected of educational institutions. Specifically, under South Carolina regulations for higher education, institutions are expected to maintain fair and transparent admissions processes. This approach ensures that efficiency gains are achieved through process refinement rather than by compromising the thoroughness of applicant evaluation, thereby upholding the spirit of equitable access to education. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing automated screening tools without a human review component is an incorrect approach. This fails to acknowledge the qualitative nuances of applications that automated systems may not accurately interpret, potentially leading to the rejection of qualified candidates who do not fit predefined algorithmic criteria. This could violate principles of fairness and equity in admissions, which are implicitly or explicitly required by South Carolina's regulatory framework for higher education. Focusing solely on reducing the time to decision without considering the impact on the depth of applicant evaluation is also an incorrect approach. It prioritizes speed over thoroughness, risking the overlooking of essential application components or the failure to adequately assess an applicant's potential beyond quantifiable metrics. Such a focus could lead to admissions decisions that are not fully informed, potentially contravening the expectation of a comprehensive review process. Adopting a one-size-fits-all approach to application review, where all applicants are subjected to the exact same, potentially rigid, set of criteria and timelines, is another incorrect approach. This fails to recognize that applicants may present their qualifications in diverse ways, and a rigid process might disadvantage those whose strengths are not easily captured by standardized metrics. This lack of flexibility can lead to inequitable outcomes, which is contrary to the principles of fair admissions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admission should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the institution's mission and values, followed by a comprehensive assessment of current processes. Any proposed optimization should be evaluated against regulatory requirements, ethical considerations of fairness and equity, and the potential impact on applicant experience and institutional reputation. A continuous improvement mindset, incorporating feedback and iterative adjustments, is crucial. When faced with process optimization, professionals should ask, does this change enhance efficiency without compromising fairness? Does it align with all applicable South Carolina regulations for higher education admissions? Does it maintain the integrity and comprehensiveness of the applicant evaluation? Question 6. System analysis indicates that an Anderson University, South Carolina admissions officer is reviewing applications for the upcoming academic year. While reviewing a candidate's file, the officer notices a slight dip in grades during their junior year, which is not fully explained by the provided documentation, alongside a strong performance in extracurricular activities. The officer is aware of the university's current enrollment targets, which approach best balances the need to meet enrollment goals with the university's commitment to academic integrity and student success. Option A. Focus primarily on the applicant's impressive extracurricular involvement, viewing it as a strong indicator of future success, and overlook the grade dip as a minor anomaly. Option B. Reject the applicant outright due to the unexplained grade dip, as it represents an unacceptable risk to academic standards. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the applicant, considering the grade dip in the context of their overall academic record and extracurricular achievements, and seek further clarification if necessary before making a decision. Option D. Prioritize admitting the applicant to meet the enrollment target, assuming their strong extracurriculars compensate for the minor academic fluctuation. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the applicant, considering the grade dip in the context of their overall academic record and extracurricular achievements, and seek further clarification if necessary before making a decision. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an admissions officer at Anderson University, South Carolina, to balance the university's commitment to academic excellence with the need to ensure a fair and equitable admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a temptation to overlook potential risks associated with certain applicant profiles, necessitating a robust risk assessment framework to guide decision-making. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential risks associated with admitting a candidate. This includes considering factors such as academic preparedness, potential for academic success, alignment with university values, and any red flags that might indicate a higher likelihood of academic or behavioral issues. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the principles of responsible admissions practices, ensuring that decisions are based on objective criteria and a thorough understanding of potential outcomes, thereby upholding the integrity of the university's academic standards and student body. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets above all else, without adequate risk assessment, is ethically flawed. It risks admitting students who may not be academically prepared, leading to higher attrition rates and potentially diluting the academic rigor of the university. This disregards the university's core mission of providing quality education. An approach that focuses solely on an applicant's extracurricular achievements, without a balanced consideration of academic qualifications and potential risks, is also problematic. While extracurriculars are valuable, they should not overshadow the fundamental requirement of academic readiness for university-level study. This could lead to admitting students who struggle academically, impacting their success and the university's reputation. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal biases, rather than a structured risk assessment, is unprofessional and unethical. Admissions decisions must be based on objective data and established criteria to ensure fairness and equity for all applicants. Subjective judgments can lead to discriminatory practices and undermine the credibility of the admissions process. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defined admission criteria and a robust risk assessment framework. This framework should guide the evaluation of each applicant, considering all relevant factors, including academic performance, standardized test scores, if applicable, essays, recommendations, and any potential risk indicators. The process should be transparent, consistent, and defensible, ensuring that decisions are made in the best interest of both the applicant and the university. Regular training on ethical admissions practices and risk management is crucial to maintain high professional standards. Question 7. The control framework reveals that an applicant for the Anderson University, South Carolina entrance exam was observed receiving subtle, nonverbal cues from a proctor during a critical section of the examination. This proctor is a temporary hire with limited training. The applicant appears to be struggling with a particular question. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to uphold the integrity of the examination process? Option A. The examination should be paused for all candidates to address the potential for proctor misconduct, without singling out the specific applicant or proctor. Option B. The applicant should be immediately informed that they are being disqualified for academic dishonesty and escorted out of the examination room. Option C. The proctor should be allowed to continue providing subtle cues, as the applicant is clearly under pressure and the cues are not overtly disruptive. Option D. The proctor should be discreetly instructed to cease any form of assistance, and the applicant's exam should be flagged for review by the admissions committee to determine if further action is warranted based on university policy. The correct answer is D. The proctor should be discreetly instructed to cease any form of assistance, and the applicant's exam should be flagged for review by the admissions committee to determine if further action is warranted based on university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to navigate the ethical considerations of academic integrity and the university's commitment to fair evaluation. The challenge lies in discerning between legitimate assistance and academic dishonesty, particularly when the pressure of an entrance exam is high. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of fairness and prevent undue advantage. The correct approach involves recognizing that the applicant's actions, while potentially stemming from a desire to perform well, constitute a breach of academic integrity. The university's entrance exam is designed to assess an individual's knowledge and aptitude independently. Providing or receiving unauthorized assistance undermines the validity of this assessment and creates an unfair playing field for other applicants. Adhering to the university's stated policies on academic honesty and the principles of fair examination is paramount. This aligns with the ethical obligation to ensure that all applicants are evaluated on their own merits, as stipulated by general principles of academic governance and fair testing practices, which are implicitly part of any university's entrance examination framework. An incorrect approach would be to overlook the applicant's actions, assuming it was a minor lapse or a misunderstanding. This fails to uphold the university's standards for academic integrity and sets a dangerous precedent. It also violates the principle of fairness to other applicants who prepared without such assistance. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the applicant without further investigation or consideration of context. While serious, a nuanced approach that allows for a review of the situation and potential educational intervention might be more appropriate, depending on the severity and intent of the core principle of not allowing the exam to stand as is remains. A third incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the applicant's perceived potential, disregarding the ethical implications of their actions. This prioritizes a potentially desirable outcome over the integrity of the admissions process. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical principles. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue, academic dishonesty. 2. Consulting relevant policies, university guidelines on academic integrity and exam conduct. 3. Evaluating the impact on the applicant, other candidates, and the university's reputation. 4. Considering appropriate actions, ranging from investigation to disqualification, always in line with established procedures. 5. Documenting the process and decision. Question 8. Compliance review shows that an admissions officer at Anderson University, South Carolina, has a close personal friendship with the parent of an applicant who is taking the entrance exam. The parent has expressed concern about their child's chances and has subtly implied a desire for the admissions officer to keep an eye out for their child's application. The admissions officer is aware that the applicant's academic profile is borderline for admission. How should the admissions officer proceed to maintain the integrity of the admissions process? Option A. The admissions officer should forward the parent's concerns to the admissions committee without mentioning their personal relationship, hoping the committee will be more sympathetic. Option B. The admissions officer should avoid any direct interaction with the parent and hope the situation resolves itself without their intervention. Option C. The admissions officer should agree to review the applicant's file with a slightly more lenient interpretation of the admission criteria, given their personal connection with the parent. Option D. The admissions officer should politely decline to discuss the applicant's specific situation with the parent, stating that all applications are reviewed based on established university criteria and that no special consideration can be given due to personal relationships. They should then ensure their own review of the application is strictly objective and adheres to all published admission standards. The correct answer is D. The admissions officer should politely decline to discuss the applicant's specific situation with the parent, stating that all applications are reviewed based on established university criteria and that no special consideration can be given due to personal relationships. They should then ensure their own review of the application is strictly objective and adheres to all published admission standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of ethical conduct and responsible decision-making within the context of university admissions, specifically as it relates to Anderson University, South Carolina's entrance exam guidelines. The challenge lies in navigating a situation where personal relationships could potentially influence objective evaluation, which is a common ethical pitfall in professional settings. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves prioritizing fairness and adherence to university policy above personal connections. This aligns with the ethical principles of impartiality and integrity expected in academic and professional environments. Anderson University, South Carolina, like most institutions, mandates that admissions decisions be based solely on merit and established criteria, as outlined in their entrance exam regulations. Any deviation that suggests preferential treatment based on a personal relationship would violate these foundational principles and undermine the credibility of the admissions process. An incorrect approach that involves advocating for a less qualified candidate due to a personal relationship fails to uphold the principle of meritocracy. This action would be a direct violation of the university's commitment to fair evaluation and could lead to accusations of favoritism, damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the request entirely without any communication, might seem safe but fails to address the ethical dilemma proactively and could be perceived as unprofessional or unhelpful, potentially creating further complications. A third incorrect approach, which is to subtly hint at the relationship without explicitly stating it, is disingenuous and still attempts to leverage personal connection, which is ethically unsound and undermines transparency. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core ethical principles at play, such as fairness, integrity, and adherence to policy. Next, they should assess the potential consequences of each possible action, considering both immediate and long-term impacts on individuals and the institution. Finally, they should choose the course of action that best upholds ethical standards and institutional policies, even if it is the more difficult path. In this case, it means ensuring that the admissions process remains objective and fair for all applicants. Question 9. The audit findings indicate a pattern of inconsistent application of admissions criteria for certain applicant pools, potentially impacting enrollment targets and revenue projections for the upcoming academic year at Anderson University, South Carolina. The university's leadership is concerned about meeting its financial obligations. Which of the following actions best addresses this situation while adhering to regulatory and ethical standards? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of the admissions process, including an assessment of current policies, their implementation, and potential biases, to identify and rectify any discrepancies or noncompliance with Anderson University's stated policies and South Carolina higher education guidelines. Option B. Implement a temporary moratorium on admissions from the affected applicant pools until a full investigation can be completed, regardless of the immediate financial implications. Option C. Focus on increasing marketing efforts to attract a larger applicant pool, thereby diluting the impact of any inconsistencies in the current admissions process. Option D. Immediately revise admissions criteria to align with historical acceptance rates for the affected applicant pools, prioritizing the achievement of enrollment targets. The correct answer is D. Immediately revise admissions criteria to align with historical acceptance rates for the affected applicant pools, prioritizing the achievement of enrollment targets. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with its long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning student admissions and program integrity. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can lead to compromises that violate established guidelines. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are not only expedient, but also compliant and ethically sound. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the audit findings, a clear understanding of Anderson University's admissions policies and South Carolina's higher education regulations, and a commitment to addressing any identified discrepancies or potential violations. This approach prioritizes transparency, accountability, and adherence to established standards. Specifically, it necessitates investigating the root causes of the audit findings, which might include issues with data integrity, policy interpretation, or procedural adherence. The university must then implement corrective actions that are sustainable and demonstrably improve compliance and ethical practices. This aligns with the general principles of good governance and regulatory compliance expected of educational institutions, ensuring that admissions processes are fair, equitable, and meet all legal and institutional requirements. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate financial pressures without addressing the underlying audit issues would be professionally unacceptable. This failure to investigate and rectify the identified problems could lead to ongoing noncompliance, reputational damage, and potential sanctions from regulatory bodies. Another incorrect approach that involves superficial adjustments without understanding the systemic causes of the audit findings would also be inadequate. This would not prevent future occurrences and would demonstrate a lack of commitment to genuine improvement. Furthermore, an approach that attempts to dismiss or downplay the audit findings without a proper investigation would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure, suggesting a disregard for accountability and transparency. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the problem, the audit findings. This should be followed by an assessment of the relevant policies, regulations, and ethical considerations. Next, potential solutions should be generated, evaluated for their compliance and effectiveness, and then implemented with clear accountability and monitoring mechanisms. This systematic process ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with the institution's mission and legal obligations. Question 10. Upon reviewing the application of a prospective student for the Anderson University, South Carolina entrance exam, the admissions committee notes that the applicant has a slightly lower standardized test score than the typical admitted student, but possesses a compelling essay and significant extracurricular achievements that suggest strong potential for success. The committee is aware that a faculty member has a personal acquaintance with the applicant's family. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's entire application package, weighing all components against Anderson University, South Carolina's established admission criteria, and document the decision-making process thoroughly. Option B. Reject the applicant's application immediately due to the standardized test score falling below the average for admitted students. Option C. Overlook the standardized test score and focus solely on the essay and extracurriculars, adjusting the evaluation criteria to favor these aspects for this applicant. Option D. Grant the applicant admission based on the faculty member's acquaintance, assuming this indicates a strong recommendation and potential. Correct answer is A. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's entire application package, weighing all components against Anderson University, South Carolina's established admission criteria, and document the decision-making process thoroughly. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. The admissions committee must balance the potential of an applicant with the need to uphold the standards of Anderson University, South Carolina. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision is both equitable to the applicant and consistent with the university's policies and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of all submitted materials, including the applicant's academic record, standardized test scores, and any supplementary information, in the context of Anderson University, South Carolina's established admission criteria. This approach prioritizes adherence to the university's stated admission policies and guidelines, ensuring a fair and consistent evaluation process for all applicants. It aligns with the ethical principle of fairness and the regulatory expectation that educational institutions operate transparently and according to their published standards. An incorrect approach would be to grant preferential treatment based on factors outside the established admission criteria, such as a personal connection to a faculty member. This would violate the principle of equal opportunity and could undermine the credibility of the admissions process. It also risks creating an unfair advantage for one applicant over others who may be equally or more qualified based on merit. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the applicant's submission without a comprehensive review, perhaps due to a perceived minor discrepancy. This fails to uphold the university's obligation to consider all applications diligently and could lead to the rejection of a potentially strong candidate, thereby not serving the university's interest in attracting diverse and capable students. A further incorrect approach would be to deviate from the established admission rubric to accommodate the applicant's perceived potential, without a clear and documented justification that aligns with university policy. This introduces subjectivity and bias, compromising the integrity of the admissions process and potentially leading to inconsistent decision-making. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand and adhere to all published admission policies and guidelines of Anderson University, South Carolina. 2. Objectively evaluate all applicant materials against these established criteria. 3. Document all decisions and the rationale behind them, ensuring transparency and accountability. 4. Seek clarification or consultation from relevant university departments or committees if ambiguities arise. 5. Prioritize fairness, equity, and academic integrity in all admissions decisions. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prospective student applying to Anderson University, South Carolina, has a strong academic record, but comes from a high school with significantly lower average standardized test scores and graduation rates compared to the state average. The applicant's essay highlights significant personal challenges overcome, including family health issues that impacted their ability to participate in extracurricular activities. How should the admissions counselor approach the evaluation of this applicant to ensure fairness and alignment with university goals? Option A. Assign a lower score to the applicant's academic achievement due to the perceived lower quality of their high school, and prioritize applicants from schools with higher average performance metrics. Option B. Conduct a holistic review, considering the applicant's academic achievements in the context of their high school's performance, the resilience demonstrated in their essay, and their potential to contribute to the university community, while also seeking additional information if necessary to clarify any ambiguities. Option C. Give significant weight to the applicant's limited extracurricular involvement, interpreting it as a lack of initiative or well-roundedness, and downplay the impact of their essay's narrative of overcoming adversity. Option D. Primarily focus on the applicant's GPA and standardized test scores, as these are the most objective measures of academic preparedness, and consider the essay and background information as secondary factors. The correct answer is B. Conduct a holistic review, considering the applicant's academic achievements in the context of their high school's performance, the resilience demonstrated in their essay, and their potential to contribute to the university community, while also seeking additional information if necessary to clarify any ambiguities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an admissions counselor to balance the university's stated commitment to diversity with the practical realities of evaluating applicants based on established criteria. The counselor must navigate potential biases, both conscious and unconscious, that could influence their judgment. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the assessment process is fair, equitable, and aligns with Anderson University's stated mission and any applicable South Carolina higher education regulations regarding admissions. Correct approach involves a holistic review that considers a broad range of factors beyond standardized test scores and GPA, actively seeking to understand the applicant's unique background, experiences, and potential contributions to the university community. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with best practices in admissions, as it aims to identify promising students who may not fit a narrow academic profile but possess significant potential. It also supports the university's stated commitment to diversity by providing a framework for evaluating applicants from varied socioeconomic, cultural, and educational backgrounds. While specific South Carolina regulations for university entrance exams are not detailed here, the general principle of fair and equitable evaluation is universally applicable in higher education admissions. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on quantitative metrics like GPA and standardized test scores. This fails to acknowledge the diverse pathways students take to reach their academic potential and can inadvertently disadvantage applicants from under-resourced schools or those who have faced significant personal challenges. Such an approach risks violating the spirit of equitable admissions and may not accurately reflect an applicant's true ability to succeed at Anderson University. Another incorrect approach would be to give undue weight to extracurricular activities that are primarily accessible to students from affluent backgrounds, without considering the context of their participation. This can perpetuate existing inequalities and does not genuinely assess an applicant's commitment or leadership potential in a way that is equitable across different socioeconomic strata. A third incorrect approach would be to make assumptions about an applicant's capabilities based on their demographic information without a thorough review of their application materials. This is a direct path to bias and discrimination, undermining the integrity of the admissions process and potentially violating ethical standards and any applicable South Carolina guidelines for fair admissions practices. The professional decision-making process should involve a commitment to understanding the university's mission and values, a thorough review of all application components, an awareness of potential personal biases, and a focus on identifying the applicant's potential for success and contribution to the university community, all within the framework of fair and equitable evaluation. Question 12. The efficiency study reveals potential areas for streamlining the Anderson University, South Carolina entrance exam administration process. Which of the following actions best reflects a professionally responsible and ethically sound response to these findings? Option A. Disregard the efficiency study's findings, citing concerns about potential disruptions to established procedures, and maintain the current administration process without further investigation. Option B. Prioritize the implementation of changes that offer the most significant cost reductions, even if they require altering the format or scoring of the entrance exam. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive, independent review of the efficiency study's findings and recommendations, involving external experts if necessary, to assess their validity and potential impact on the integrity of the admissions process before any changes are considered. Option D. Immediately implement the proposed changes outlined in the efficiency study to realize the identified cost savings and operational improvements. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive, independent review of the efficiency study's findings and recommendations, involving external experts if necessary, to assess their validity and potential impact on the integrity of the admissions process before any changes are considered. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's desire for efficiency and cost savings with the ethical obligation to provide accurate and unbiased information to prospective students. The entrance exam is a critical gateway, and any manipulation of its results or the process surrounding it can have significant ethical and potentially legal ramifications. The pressure to demonstrate improved efficiency must not compromise the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a thorough, independent review of the efficiency study's findings and recommendations. This approach is professionally sound because it prioritizes data integrity and adherence to established university policies and ethical guidelines for admissions. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of fairness and transparency expected in academic admissions. By seeking an independent assessment, the university ensures that any proposed changes are based on objective analysis and do not inadvertently disadvantage applicants or compromise the academic standards of Anderson University, South Carolina. This upholds the trust placed in the university by students, parents, and the broader academic community. An approach that immediately implements changes based solely on the internal efficiency study's recommendations is professionally unacceptable. This fails to account for potential biases within the study or overlooked consequences of the proposed changes. It bypasses necessary checks and balances, potentially leading to unfair admissions practices and a breach of ethical conduct. Another incorrect approach, which involves dismissing the efficiency study entirely without proper review, is also professionally unsound. A caution is warranted. Outright dismissal without investigation ignores a potential opportunity for legitimate improvement and may be perceived as resistance to necessary change, potentially leading to future inefficiencies. A third professionally unacceptable approach is to focus solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on the quality and fairness of the admissions process. This prioritizes financial metrics over the core mission of providing equitable access to education and upholding academic integrity, which is a fundamental ethical failure in university administration. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-step approach. First, a comprehensive understanding of the study's findings and proposed changes. Second, an independent assessment of the study's methodology and conclusions. Third, a careful evaluation of the potential ethical, academic, and operational impacts of any proposed changes. And finally, consultation with relevant stakeholders, including admissions committees and academic leadership, before any decisions are made or implemented. This ensures that decisions are well-informed, ethically sound, and aligned with the university's mission and values. Question 13. Examination of the data shows that the admissions office has collected extensive demographic and academic information from a large pool of prospective students for the upcoming academic year at Anderson University. The admissions counselor is considering how best to utilize this information, recognizing the sensitivity of the data. Which of the following actions best upholds ethical and regulatory standards for handling this applicant data? Option A. Strictly adhere to Anderson University's admissions policies and South Carolina privacy regulations, using the data solely for the evaluation of applicants for admission. Option B. Create a top applicant list based on the collected data for internal marketing efforts to highlight successful recruitment strategies. Option C. Share the aggregated, anonymized data with a local business association for their market research purposes, as it provides valuable insights into the local demographic trends. Option D. Discuss specific applicant details with colleagues in other university departments, not directly involved in admissions, to share insights on applicant profiles. The correct answer is A. Strictly adhere to Anderson University's admissions policies and South Carolina privacy regulations, using the data solely for the evaluation of applicants for admission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for accurate admissions data with the ethical obligation to protect applicant privacy and ensure fairness in the admissions process. The admissions counselor is in a position of trust and must adhere to established ethical guidelines and university policies. The core conflict lies in the potential misuse of sensitive personal information for purposes beyond the stated admissions review. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to Anderson University's stated admissions policies and South Carolina privacy regulations. This means using the collected data solely for its intended purpose, evaluating applicants for admission. Any deviation, such as sharing it with external parties, or using it for unrelated internal initiatives without explicit consent or a clear policy basis, would violate ethical principles of confidentiality and data integrity, and potentially South Carolina law regarding the handling of personal information. An incorrect approach would be to share the aggregated, anonymized data with a local business association for their market research. While the data is anonymized, the initial collection was for a specific purpose, admissions, and using it for an unrelated external purpose, even if seemingly benign, breaches the implied contract of confidentiality with applicants and could violate South Carolina privacy statutes that govern the use of collected personal data. This action prioritizes an external entity's needs over the applicant's privacy rights and the university's stated data usage policies. Another incorrect approach would be to use the data to create a top applicant list for internal marketing purposes without explicit consent. While this might seem like a way to leverage valuable information, it crosses an ethical line by repurposing sensitive applicant data for promotional activities that were not disclosed during the application process. This could lead to a perception of unfairness and a violation of applicant trust, potentially contravening university policies on data use and privacy. A further incorrect approach would be to discuss specific applicant details with colleagues in other departments not directly involved in admissions, even if framed as sharing insights. This opens the door to gossip, potential bias, and a breach of confidentiality. Admissions data is sensitive and should only be accessed and discussed by authorized personnel for legitimate admissions-related purposes, as dictated by university policy and ethical standards. Professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admissions policies, data privacy policies, and relevant South Carolina laws. When faced with a potential data use dilemma, a professional should ask, is this use consistent with the stated purpose for which the data was collected? Is there explicit consent from the applicant for this use? Does this action align with university policy and legal requirements? If there is any doubt, consulting with the university's legal counsel or compliance officer is the most prudent step. Question 14. Assessment of how to ethically present program employment statistics to prospective students at Anderson University, South Carolina, considering the university's enrollment goals and the need for transparency. Option A. Delay the full disclosure of employment statistics until after a student has committed to enrollment, focusing on initial recruitment materials that highlight only positive aspects. Option B. Selectively present data points that create an overly optimistic impression of employment prospects, even if this involves omitting context or less favorable trends. Option C. Provide a comprehensive overview of employment statistics, including realistic outcomes and potential challenges, to enable informed decision-making. Option D. Emphasize only the most successful graduate placement rates and success stories, while downplaying or omitting data on graduates who faced employment difficulties. The correct answer is C. Provide a comprehensive overview of employment statistics, including realistic outcomes and potential challenges, to enable informed decision-making. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for enrollment with the ethical obligation to provide accurate and transparent information to prospective students. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to the temptation to downplay or omit crucial details about program outcomes or career prospects. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are guided by ethical principles and regulatory compliance rather than solely by institutional goals. The correct approach involves proactively and transparently communicating realistic employment statistics and program outcomes to prospective students. This aligns with the ethical duty of honesty and integrity, as well as the regulatory expectation of providing accurate information to consumers of educational services. By presenting a balanced view, including potential challenges and realistic outcomes, the university upholds its commitment to student success and avoids misleading applicants. This approach fosters trust and allows students to make informed decisions aligned with their career aspirations and capabilities. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on highlighting positive outcomes while omitting or downplaying less favorable statistics would be ethically unsound and potentially violate regulations concerning truth in advertising and consumer protection in education. This misrepresentation can lead to student dissatisfaction, financial strain, and damage to the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach, which involves delaying the disclosure of potentially negative information until after enrollment, is also ethically problematic. This tactic exploits the student's commitment and can create a sense of being trapped, undermining the principle of informed consent. It also fails to meet the spirit of regulatory requirements that mandate transparency throughout the admissions and enrollment process. A third incorrect approach, which involves selectively presenting data to create an overly optimistic picture, constitutes a form of deception. This manipulation of information, even if technically not outright falsehoods, misleads prospective students and violates the ethical obligation to provide a fair and accurate representation of program realities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to transparency, honesty, and student welfare. Professionals should first identify potential conflicts of interest and ethical considerations. They should then gather all relevant data, including both positive and negative aspects, and assess how this information can be communicated clearly and accurately. Seeking guidance from university ethics committees or legal counsel can also be beneficial in navigating complex situations. Ultimately, the decision should prioritize the informed consent and well-being of prospective students, ensuring that all communications are truthful and representative of the educational experience and its potential outcomes. Question 15. Which approach would be most appropriate for the Anderson University, South Carolina Admissions Committee when reviewing an applicant whose submitted academic transcripts show a significant, unexplained gap in their coursework, but who has provided a compelling personal narrative explaining the circumstances? Option A. Immediately deny the application due to the unexplained academic gap, as it indicates a failure to meet standard academic progression. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's submitted explanation and any supporting documentation, evaluating it against university admissions policies and considering potential mitigating factors before making a decision. Option C. Seek informal advice from senior faculty members outside the admissions committee to gauge their opinion on the applicant's suitability. Option D. Grant provisional admission based on the compelling personal narrative, with the condition that the applicant must successfully complete a remedial course upon enrollment. The correct answer is A. Immediately deny the application due to the unexplained academic gap, as it indicates a failure to meet standard academic progression. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the personal circumstances of a prospective student. The admissions committee must uphold the rigorous standards expected for entrance to Anderson University, South Carolina, while also considering the potential for mitigating factors that might explain a discrepancy in academic records. The decision-making process is complicated by the need to be fair, consistent, and compliant with university policies and any relevant South Carolina educational regulations, which are paramount in this context. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and policy-driven review. This means gathering all necessary information, including the student's explanation and any supporting documentation, and then evaluating it against established university admissions criteria and policies. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to institutional standards. It ensures that decisions are based on merit and established guidelines, rather than on subjective biases or incomplete information. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of due process and equitable treatment for all applicants, as expected within the framework of university admissions in South Carolina. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the application based on the initial discrepancy without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge potential extenuating circumstances and could lead to an unfair rejection, violating the principle of equitable consideration for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to grant an exception solely based on the student's personal appeal, without a systematic review of the evidence or consideration of how this might set a precedent that undermines academic standards. This approach risks compromising the integrity of the admissions process and could be seen as favoritism, which is ethically problematic and potentially inconsistent with university policy. A third incorrect approach would be to rely on informal channels or personal opinions to make a decision, bypassing established procedures. This lacks transparency and accountability, and is a direct contravention of professional standards for admissions committees. Professionals in this situation should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves 1. Clearly identifying the ethical and regulatory obligations. 2. Gathering all relevant facts and perspectives. 3. Analyzing the situation against established policies and ethical principles. 4. Considering potential consequences of each course of action. And 5. Making a reasoned, documented decision that is defensible and consistent with institutional values and regulatory requirements. Question 16. Implementation of a revised admissions policy at Anderson University, South Carolina, prompted by a request to consider legacy status for an applicant whose parent is a prominent university donor, requires careful consideration of existing regulatory frameworks. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of fair and equitable admissions under South Carolina's higher education guidelines? Option A. Create a special admissions committee to review the specific applicant's case, allowing for subjective considerations beyond the standard academic and extracurricular criteria. Option B. Formally incorporate legacy status as a weighted factor in the admissions rubric, provided it is applied consistently to all applicants with familial ties to the university and does not override academic merit. Option C. Decline to consider legacy status and proceed with the applicant's review solely based on the existing academic and extracurricular qualifications, as outlined in the current admissions handbook. Option D. Expedite the applicant's review process and grant admission based on the donor's significant financial contributions, without altering the general admissions criteria for other applicants. The correct answer is B. Formally incorporate legacy status as a weighted factor in the admissions rubric, provided it is applied consistently to all applicants with familial ties to the university and does not override academic merit. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of university admissions while facing potential external pressures. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to fair and equitable admissions with the desire to accommodate a specific applicant's circumstances, which could be perceived as preferential treatment. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision aligns with Anderson University's stated admissions policies and relevant South Carolina regulations governing higher education institutions. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the applicant's qualifications against the established admissions criteria, documented in Anderson University's official admissions handbook, and any applicable South Carolina Commission on Higher Education guidelines. This approach is professionally sound because it upholds the principles of fairness, transparency, and equal opportunity, which are fundamental to academic integrity and regulatory compliance. By adhering strictly to established criteria, the university avoids any appearance of impropriety or bias, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated on a level playing field. This aligns with the ethical obligation to treat all prospective students equitably and the regulatory requirement to operate admissions processes in a manner that is non-discriminatory and consistent with institutional policies. An incorrect approach that involves granting preferential treatment based on the applicant's family's affiliation with the university, without a documented basis in the admissions criteria, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This action undermines the integrity of the admissions process, potentially violating principles of meritocracy and equal access. It could also contravene South Carolina regulations that mandate fair and objective admissions practices for state-supported institutions. Furthermore, such preferential treatment could lead to legal challenges if it is perceived as discriminatory against other equally qualified applicants. Another incorrect approach, which involves creating a new ad hoc criterion specifically for this applicant, also constitutes a regulatory and ethical lapse. This circumvents the established admissions framework and introduces an element of arbitrariness. It signals a lack of adherence to institutional policy and could be seen as a violation of the spirit, if not the letter, of South Carolina's higher education regulations, which typically require transparent and consistently applied admissions standards. This approach erodes trust in the admissions process and could set a dangerous precedent for future admissions decisions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify the core issue. Is the request for special consideration aligned with existing university policies and regulations? 2. Consult relevant documentation. Review the Anderson University Admissions Handbook, institutional policies on admissions, and any applicable South Carolina Commission on Higher Education guidelines. 3. Seek guidance. If ambiguity exists, consult with the admissions committee, the university's legal counsel, or the appropriate administrative body responsible for admissions oversight. 4. Apply established criteria objectively. Evaluate the applicant's case strictly against the documented admissions standards. 5. Document the decision-making process. Maintain clear records of the review, any consultations, and the final decision, along with the rationale. 6. Ensure transparency and fairness. The outcome should be consistent with how similar cases have been or would be handled, reinforcing the integrity of the admissions process. Question 17. The efficiency study reveals that the review of applicant essays is a significant factor in the overall admissions processing time at Anderson University, South Carolina. To address this, which of the following strategies best balances the need for timely decisions with the commitment to a thorough and fair evaluation of each applicant's potential, while adhering to South Carolina's higher education standards for admissions? Option A. Delegate the entire essay review process to a third-party service that specializes in high-volume essay scoring, without direct university oversight of their methodology. Option B. Implement a multi-stage essay review process where initial screening focuses on completeness and adherence to guidelines, followed by a detailed qualitative assessment by admissions counselors for essays that pass the initial stage. Option C. Significantly reduce the required length and complexity of the applicant essay to expedite the review process. Option D. Introduce an automated essay scoring system that assigns a numerical score to each essay, with admissions decisions primarily based on these scores. The correct answer is B. Implement a multi-stage essay review process where initial screening focuses on completeness and adherence to guidelines, followed by a detailed qualitative assessment by admissions counselors for essays that pass the initial stage. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential bottleneck in the admissions process at Anderson University, South Carolina, specifically concerning the review of applicant essays. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for timely admissions decisions with the university's commitment to a fair and thorough evaluation of each applicant's potential. Over-optimization for speed could inadvertently lead to overlooking critical qualitative aspects of an applicant's submission, potentially impacting the diversity and academic caliber of the incoming class. Conversely, an overly cautious approach might delay decisions, affecting applicant experience and enrollment targets. The university must navigate these competing demands while adhering to its own admissions policies and any relevant South Carolina higher education regulations, which typically emphasize fairness, non-discrimination, and the holistic review of applicants. The correct approach involves implementing a phased review system for essays. This would entail an initial screening for basic completeness and adherence to submission guidelines, followed by a more in-depth qualitative assessment by trained admissions counselors for essays that pass the initial screen. This method optimizes efficiency by streamlining the initial review while preserving the integrity of the deeper evaluation. It aligns with professional best practices in admissions by ensuring that all applicants receive a meaningful review, thereby upholding principles of fairness and equity. This approach is ethically sound, as it respects the effort applicants put into their essays and aims to identify promising candidates based on their demonstrated writing ability and critical thinking, as expected by Anderson University's admission standards. An incorrect approach would be to implement an automated essay scoring system that assigns a numerical score without human oversight. This fails to meet the professional standard of a holistic review, as it reduces a complex qualitative assessment to a quantitative metric, potentially disadvantaging applicants with unique writing styles or perspectives that an algorithm might not recognize. Ethically, this approach risks introducing bias if the algorithm is not carefully designed and validated, and it fails to uphold the university's commitment to understanding the individual applicant. Another incorrect approach would be to significantly reduce the word count or complexity of the essay requirement to speed up review times. This fundamentally alters the nature of the assessment, potentially diminishing its value as a tool for evaluating critical thinking and communication skills, and could be seen as a superficial attempt at efficiency that compromises the quality of the admissions process. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a systematic evaluation of proposed changes against established institutional goals, ethical principles, and any applicable regulatory guidelines. This involves considering the impact on all stakeholders, including applicants, admissions staff, and the university as a whole. A robust process would include pilot testing of any new procedures, gathering feedback from admissions counselors, and ensuring that any changes are transparent and well communicated. Question 18. During the evaluation of Anderson University's undergraduate admissions process, a proposal is made to significantly streamline operations by implementing a new system. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for efficiency with the university's commitment to a fair and comprehensive applicant review, adhering to established institutional guidelines and South Carolina's regulatory environment for higher education? Option A. Introduce an automated system that flags applicants based strictly on predefined GPA and standardized test score thresholds, with minimal human intervention for those who meet the criteria. Option B. Undertake a comprehensive analysis of the current admissions workflow, identifying specific bottlenecks and areas for improvement, and then pilot targeted, data-informed changes that maintain the integrity of the holistic review process. Option C. Conduct a series of workshops with a small group of experienced admissions officers to gather their immediate suggestions for process changes based on their intuition. Option D. Prioritize reducing the average time admissions staff spend reviewing each application by implementing stricter time limits for each stage of the review. The correct answer is A. Introduce an automated system that flags applicants based strictly on predefined GPA and standardized test score thresholds, with minimal human intervention for those who meet the criteria. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's need for efficient admissions processes with the ethical obligation to ensure fairness and compliance with its own stated admission guidelines and potentially South Carolina state regulations regarding educational institutions. The pressure to optimize can lead to shortcuts that compromise integrity. Careful judgment is required to identify and implement improvements that are both effective and ethically sound. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the existing admissions workflow to identify bottlenecks and areas for improvement, followed by the implementation of targeted changes that enhance efficiency without compromising the thoroughness or fairness of the evaluation process. This aligns with the principles of good governance and operational excellence expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it respects the established criteria and procedures for evaluating applicants, ensuring that all candidates are assessed consistently and equitably, as would be expected under general principles of administrative fairness and institutional policy, which are implicitly governed by South Carolina law concerning educational institutions' operational standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing automated screening based solely on GPA and standardized test scores without human oversight fails to account for the holistic review often emphasized in university admissions, potentially overlooking qualified candidates with diverse strengths. This approach risks violating the spirit of comprehensive evaluation and could lead to discriminatory outcomes if the algorithms are not carefully designed and monitored for bias, which would be contrary to principles of fair treatment and institutional responsibility. Relying on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few senior admissions staff to redesign the process, without data-driven analysis or broader input, can lead to subjective and potentially biased changes. This approach lacks the rigor necessary for effective process optimization and may not address the root causes of any inefficiencies, potentially introducing new problems or exacerbating existing ones, and failing to meet the standards of objective administrative practice. Focusing exclusively on reducing the time spent per application without considering the quality of the review risks superficial evaluations. This can lead to admitting less suitable candidates or rejecting highly qualified ones, thereby undermining the academic mission of Anderson University and potentially leading to reputational damage and noncompliance with the university's own stated admission standards. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization by first understanding the current state, identifying specific problems through data and observation, and then developing solutions that are aligned with the organization's mission, values, and regulatory obligations. This involves a structured problem-solving methodology, stakeholder consultation, and a commitment to continuous improvement that prioritizes both efficiency and integrity. When faced with pressures to optimize, professionals must always ask, does this change uphold our core commitments and regulatory responsibilities? Question 19. Process analysis reveals that an admissions committee member at Anderson University, South Carolina, is reviewing an application from a student from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background who has demonstrated resilience and strong potential despite lower standardized test scores than the university's average. The committee member is considering how to weigh this applicant's unique circumstances against the university's stated commitment to academic excellence and diversity, which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and guidelines for Anderson University, South Carolina entrance exams. Option A. Focus exclusively on the applicant's standardized test scores and GPA, disregarding their background and any mitigating circumstances. To maintain the highest academic standards, Option B. Prioritize the applicant's demonstrated resilience and potential, using their background as a key factor in admission to enhance diversity, even if it means admitting them with scores significantly below established benchmarks. Option C. Automatically admit the applicant due to their disadvantaged background, as this fulfills the university's diversity goals without further scrutiny of their academic preparedness. Option D. Conduct a holistic review, considering the applicant's background and experiences as valuable context for their academic record and potential contributions, while still ensuring they meet the core academic requirements as outlined in Anderson University's admission policies. The correct answer is B. Prioritize the applicant's demonstrated resilience and potential, using their background as a key factor in admission to enhance diversity, even if it means admitting them with scores significantly below established benchmarks. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an admissions committee member to balance the university's stated commitment to diversity with the need to maintain academic rigor and adhere to admission standards. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying admission criteria in a way that is fair, equitable, and compliant with Anderson University's established policies and any relevant South Carolina state or federal regulations governing higher education admissions, which are the sole jurisdiction for this exam. A deep understanding of these specific regulations is crucial to avoid discriminatory practices or the appearance thereof. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers the applicant's background and experiences as contributing factors to their potential success at Anderson University, without these factors becoming the sole determinant or overriding established academic benchmarks inappropriately. This approach aligns with best practices in admissions by seeking to build a diverse and capable student body, provided it is executed within the framework of Anderson University's published admission guidelines and South Carolina's educational regulations. The justification rests on the principle of equitable consideration, where an applicant's circumstances are understood in context, allowing for a more nuanced assessment of their qualifications and potential contributions to the university community, all while respecting the university's academic standards. An incorrect approach would be to automatically admit or reject an applicant solely based on their demographic characteristics, irrespective of their academic qualifications or alignment with the university's stated admission criteria. This would violate principles of fairness and potentially contravene South Carolina regulations that prohibit discrimination in educational admissions. Another incorrect approach would be to disregard the applicant's unique background and experiences entirely, focusing solely on standardized metrics, which could lead to the exclusion of promising candidates who might bring valuable diversity and perspectives to the university, and could be seen as a failure to implement a truly holistic review process as often encouraged by university policies. A third incorrect approach would be to create a separate, less stringent set of admission criteria for certain demographic groups, which would be discriminatory and likely violate state and federal educational laws. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of Anderson University's admission policies and any applicable South Carolina state laws. This framework should emphasize objective evaluation of academic credentials, followed by a contextualized assessment of extracurricular activities, essays, and recommendations, considering how an applicant's background might have influenced their opportunities and achievements. The process should be transparent, consistent, and documented to ensure accountability and fairness. Question 20. Performance analysis shows that Anderson University's admissions committee is reviewing applications for the upcoming academic year, with a stated goal of increasing student body diversity while maintaining academic excellence. One applicant presents a strong personal essay and compelling extracurricular involvement demonstrating leadership potential, but their standardized test scores and GPA are below the average for admitted students. The committee member is tasked with assessing this applicant's potential impact on the incoming class. Option A. Recommend admitting the applicant, emphasizing their demonstrated leadership and unique perspective as valuable contributions to campus diversity, while acknowledging the need for targeted academic support services to ensure their success. Option B. Recommend rejecting the applicant due to their academic metrics falling below the established benchmarks, as academic preparedness is the primary determinant of success at Anderson University. Option C. Advocate for admitting the applicant based on their potential to meet diversity goals, even if it means adjusting the academic threshold for this specific case to accommodate their admission. Option D. Suggest deferring the decision until further information can be gathered, such as additional standardized test attempts or letters of recommendation, specifically addressing academic potential. Correct answer is A. Recommend admitting the applicant, emphasizing their demonstrated leadership and unique perspective as valuable contributions to campus diversity, while acknowledging the need for targeted academic support services to ensure their success. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an admissions committee member to balance the university's stated commitment to diversity with the need to maintain academic rigor and adhere to admissions policies. The pressure to meet diversity targets can create a conflict of interest if it leads to compromising established academic standards or fair evaluation processes, potentially undermining the integrity of the admissions process and the university's reputation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers the applicant's background and experiences within the context of their academic achievements and potential contributions to the university community. This aligns with the principles of fair and equitable admissions, as outlined by general university admissions, best practices, and ethical considerations for educational institutions. It acknowledges that diversity can be achieved through various means, and that a comprehensive evaluation ensures that all aspects of an applicant's profile are considered, rather than solely focusing on one metric. This approach respects the individual applicant's journey while upholding the university's commitment to a well-rounded student body. Incorrect approach is analysis. Prioritizing diversity metrics above all else, even if it means overlooking significant academic deficiencies, represents a failure to uphold academic standards and could lead to admitting students who are not adequately prepared for the rigor of university-level coursework. This approach risks compromising the academic integrity of Anderson University and potentially setting students up for failure. focusing exclusively on standardized test scores and GPA, while important indicators, without considering the applicant's background or potential, fails to embrace a holistic view of the applicant pool. This can inadvertently disadvantage students from less privileged backgrounds who may have faced systemic barriers, thus undermining the goal of fostering a diverse and inclusive learning environment. Seeking external validation or pressure from specific departments to admit a particular student, regardless of their qualifications, constitutes an ethical breach. This bypasses the established admissions process and introduces bias, potentially leading to unfair treatment of other applicants and compromising the committee's objectivity. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established policies. This involves 1. Understanding and applying the university's stated admissions criteria and diversity goals in a balanced manner. 2. Conducting a thorough and objective review of each applicant's complete application. 3. Recognizing and mitigating potential biases. 4. Collaborating with the admissions committee to ensure consistent application of standards. 5. Documenting the rationale for admissions decisions to ensure accountability.